So I've been asked to make a short presentation on Ghana's situation, gender representation and leadership in national circles. So I'll just give a few introductory remarks, a little background information, a little glance at the Affirmative Action Gender Equity Bill. So basically, from the population census that we had, the last one was in 2020, it was very clear that we had more women in Ghana. I think women were about 50.7%. However, when it comes to political leadership, governance, and decision-making positions, you find fewer and fewer women. And therefore, women as a group are not adequately represented when it comes to decision-making positions. As I said, so basically, with this kind of background, a law was needed. It was decided that a law was needed because many other countries have used legislation to try to bring a more balanced society. So we'll take a look at some of the data that we have. When it comes to our parliaments, right from when we became a republic in 1960, we had a few women in parliament. Out of the 104 parliament, there was a special law which brought in 10 women, from around the country. That was 9.6%. The highest we've ever had in terms of representation of women in Ghana was in the 1965 elections, where 19 women were elected into parliament, making it 18.2%. Since then, it's not been really very good. Currently, as of 2020, we already heard from the introduction, 275 member parliaments. Well, currently there's an additional number, so there are 276 now. We only have 40 women, making it 14.5%. It is not very good because it falls below what the UN expects, which is 30%. So furthermore, when it comes to the local governance level, it's also no better. So from an analysis of the district assembly elections over the years, the numbers has not been very good. In 2016, for instance, out of 1,772 women candidates, only 478 made it. In 2019, also out of 909 women candidates, 216 made it. In the 2023 one, reports currently indicates that the women who made it are less than 4%. So you realize that at the local governance level, which is supposed to affect all of us in our day-to-day living, very few women are there representing. So you don't have the voice of women also representing things that are of concern to women at that level. At the executive level, we also have, in Ghana, we've never had a female president, we've never had a female vice president. Ministerial positions have always had more men than women. Even the economic management team, some of the appointive positions, currently, the team of 7 has no woman represented. And as we know, when it comes to economic, our markets, etc., those who are there in the majority are women, but they are not represented at this level. At the Council of State, we have 37 men and only 4 women. These are all key decision-making positions where we also needed women's voices and women's issues addressed. This chart, which we got from the Africa Barometer report of 2021, shows the charts when it comes to female ministers since 1992. I think the highest was around 2012, and currently it doesn't look very good. When it comes to the judiciary, so we're looking at the 3 key arms of government. At the judiciary, we've also always had more men in the superior courts than women. But currently, I understand that things are also changing. They have some kind of a gender policy, so they are trying. So currently, we have more and more women coming into the judiciary. But in terms of the numbers, the men still outnumber the women. Again, in terms of leadership, ultimate leadership at the judiciary level, we have 3 female chief justices out of about 20 so far. I forgot to mention that of Parliament. In Parliament, we've had only 1 female speaker, who is the head, since Ghana gained independence. Within the private sector, this is also reflected there as well. Of course, there are a lot of women-led businesses, which are led by women, etc. But when you look at the public sector, state corporations, companies in which the state has interest, etc., some data we got, they say that out of 35 companies listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange, 38% have 1 or no female on their board at all, as of 2022. So usually, once they start appointing board members, you can always see from the pictures that the men outnumber the women. So, like I said, this has led to, based on advocacy and based on the constitutional provisions, Article 17.4 of our Constitution, as well as Ghana's international obligations and the various international instruments, including the Sustainable Development Goals, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, this law has come into being. Quickly, what does the law seek to do? It seeks to provide a legal framework and an accountability framework for measuring gender equity in the executive, in the public sector, as well as in the private sector. So at the public sector, you're looking at the executive, including all the various ministries, the chief directors, etc., the legislature, the judiciary, public and private sectors. So it seeks to promote a progressive increase in the active participation of women in public life from a minimum of 30% to equality of 50% by the year 2030, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDG, we call it the SDG. SDG 5 says that by the year 2030, there should be parity when it comes to gender equality in different countries, including when it comes to governance positions. So this act, as I indicated, Affirmative Action Gender Equity Act, was passed by Parliament, the Parliament of Ghana, on the 30th of July, 2024. It's a bill that was put together by the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, and it was assented to by the President on the 18th of September, so it became law. We are still waiting for the Ghana Publishing to come up with the actual number, text number of the law. So this landmark legislation represents a crucial advancement in Ghana's efforts towards gender equity and women's empowerment. So there's a schedule at the back of the law, which the first schedule, it indicates where we are supposed to be aimed, in terms of the fight towards gender equity, towards gender equality. Where do we start from? As I said, from Parliament, for instance, currently it's 14.5. What the law says is that from 2024 to 2026, the first 2 years, we have to try to reach the UN target of 30% representation of women in leadership. From 2027 to 2028, 35%. And then between 2029 and 2030, we will reach the parity, which is 50%. So it's progressive increase. We didn't say just get here at the same time. So the government is supposed to promote policies and programs to address the political, social, economic, and educational imbalances in both the public and private sectors. This is what this law aims to do. Again, one of the key instruments that this law will establish is a body known as, is a multi-sectorial body called the Gender Equity Committee to oversee the Act's implementation. And this particular body will be based at the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. So it's made up of people from various ministries, Attorney General's Office, Ministry of Health, many other ministries, some representation from labor and also from the private sector, as well as from CSOs, and some experts, gender experts, etc., who will be there to guide things. One of the first things they are supposed to do is have a plan. Once it is set up, they will have to have a plan in terms of how to implement. How would they be able to tell whether a particular sector has achieved the target set? It will be through having what we call a baseline study. So in the action plan, we are hoping that they will have a baseline study to know where each of the sectors are, so that they'll be able to measure them yearly to see where they are coming to. As far as the public sector is concerned, the government is required to ensure the appropriate representation of women in governance and decision-making positions, particularly when it comes to appointments, etc. When it comes to, in line with the first schedule, the legislature is mentioned, but like I said, in the law itself, one of the weakest parts of the law is the part to do with political representation. Currently, the Constitution itself indicates who has a right to go to Parliament in terms of what qualification you need to have. I think it's in Article 93 and 94. There's nothing there about gender representation. And therefore, in the law that we have now, even though the Parliament is supposed to try to comply with the indicators in there, it is encouraging the various parties to make sure that their manifestos reflect gender, a move towards gender equity and equality. That's in the body of the political party itself. Currently most parties, women are at the what they call the women's section, women's wing. We want to see more women in leadership. Then when it comes to getting people to stand for positions, they are supposed to also endeavor to try to get as many women as possible to stand and to be able to gain access. There are offenses, there's an offenses section of the law which makes it an offense to victimize, obstruct, exert undue influence in a female in public service or even in the private sector as well. Verbal attacks. Sometimes when women are trying to ASPA app, people are insulting them, etc., etc. Within the private sector, they are also supposed to have what they call gender policies, which will show their plan in terms of how they intend to address that gender representation in their place of work, as well as having structures in place which will address things that sometimes inhibit women up. Sexual harassment in the workplace, for instance, sometimes entry into work is a problem. Issues about progression, the quid pro quo type of sexual harassment. If you don't sleep with somebody, you don't move up. All those things will be offenses. There are some laws, like the labor law deals with parts of it, but you can also report if anything goes wrong. And when something goes wrong, you can report to the Gender Equity Committee. They will look at it. You can also use some of the existing state bodies, including the National Labour Commission, and then the SHRAJ, and then you can also go to court. The High Court is also one of the places you can access if your rights are not being respected. So in sum, I was given 10 minutes, so it's a very short presentation, and I hope that I've given you a quick overview of what this whole law is about. If the law is implemented, if you take us on this journey, we need representation so that issues that come up would have both men and women considering it and taking a decision which will ensure that we have better development in our country. There's research which shows that countries where you have more inclusion, better gender representation, those countries do better, much more. They develop much better in a sustainable manner than those who do not. So I'm hoping that with this law, we have joined the Community of Nations. We need to see that the law is implemented to enable us to get to this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we can give her a round of applause. Thank you so much, Madam Sheila.